Everybody. Sorry I couldn't be there in person.
No worries. You're here. Thank you.
Just one.
You just got on.
Okay, can we get started? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to call to order this meeting of the City of Salem Climate Action Plan Committee. It's Tuesday, February 18th, 2025. And it's 1:06 p.m. And I am Mickey Varney, the chair of the committee. And the other members here are
Vanessa Nordyke.
Paul Tigan, Ward 1.
Shane Matthews.
Thank you, Paul. And staff present?
Robert Chandler, Assistant Director.
Juliana Douglas, Climate Action Plan Committee.
Brian Martin, Public Works Director.
I'm Linda Nishioka, alternate.
Okay. Well, thank you all for being here, beginning of the year. This is great, exciting. We've got lots of great stuff to go over today. So first of all, I'd like to start off with public comment. Is there anybody who would like to comment at all?
That's in the,
Okay, okay.
Do you want to comment?
Would you like to comment?
Did you want-
Okay, okay. And would you like to introduce yourself since you're here today, right?
Ray Quisner, I work with 350 and just concerned citizens.
Okay, well, thanks for being here. And online, we have Lucy Hitchcock. Lucy, would you like to say anything? We did receive your letter of public comment, and thank you for sending that in. Is there anything you'd like to share while you're online here?
Just that I think we have a lot of responsibility here because the federal government is saying that climate change is not true. So I'm just supporting you in what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate that very much, and thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is approval of our November 4th, 2024 meeting minutes. Could I have a motion for approval? Anyone?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, moved by Councilor Tigan, second.
I'll second.
Second.
Yes, Counselor Nordyke.
Okay, thank you. All right, any discussion? Everyone get a chance to look through them? Okay, thank you. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. All right, motion passes. The minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is our climate action plan overview. Go ahead.
Yep.
It's my pleasure to be here. Appreciate the time. I'm Robert Chandler, Assistant Director of Public Works. Climate Action Plan falls under my purview. And again, a pleasure to be here. What I'm going to share is this big overview of our Climate Action Plan. We'll talk about sort of when we began, how it was crafted, generally what's inside the Climate Action Plan, and then where we are in progress report. So to begin, in October 2020, City Council adopted these two climate action goals, 50% community-wide greenhouse gas reductions by 2035, and then that would be carbon neutral by 2050. In the course of making this motion and discussions, it was brought at that time, Oregon State had established a set of climate action goals similar to these, as well as 6 other cities in Oregon. Portland, Corvallis, Eugene, Bend, Milwaukee, and Ashland. And then about 18 months later, we had the staff presented to Salem City Council, our Salem Climate Action Plan that was accepted by council in February of 2022. How we got there, we actually began working on the Climate Action Plan before, hang on, before the plan was presented in the 2020 council policy agenda. It was noted that the city should start work on a climate action plan. The policy agenda also helpfully suggested 5 strategies to address climate issues, increase the cost for parking for most vehicles, lower the cost of parking for carpool vehicles, encourage telecommuting, use electric vehicles in the city fleet, and increase our tree canopy. And those 5, just bear those 5 strategies in mind as we move forward on the climate action plan. So we began working in August 2020. And again, October of that same year is when council adopted the climate action plan climate goals. A lot of discussion about whether or not those goals should be established prior to the completion of the plan, so you would know what we can achieve, or make the plan and then, or set the goals and then see how close you can come with the contents of the climate action plan. In the end, the decision was made to set the goals and see what the plan leads us, and that's what we did. Key to getting the climate action plan started is we formed a task force, a 41-member task force. I'll talk more about that as we get along. Task force worked not quite a little over a year. In November 2022, the task force work was completed. In December, we presented to City Council the final draft, the climate action plan, along with 200 pages of public comments. The public comments were still coming in, and so we suggested that we keep the record open and continue to talk about climate action plan for a couple more months. February, we presented the climate action plan to council for them to accept it, along with 500 more pages of public comments, 700 total. On February council meeting, City Council they accepted the climate action plan. Every good story has a subplot. Ours was COVID. We kicked off work about the same time that it was declared a worldwide pandemic. It both helped and hindered, and actually more helped us in the process because it allowed more people to participate. The Climate Action Plan Task Force, the consultant team that we engaged, Verdis Group, was out of Omaha, Nebraska, with staff in California. We use a lot of online tools, communications. The number of times we had to say "you're on mute" decreased over the time we were working on this. We got better at it. It was a fascinating process to develop during a course of remote work. The members of the task force were deliberately selected to provide a wide breadth of opinions, and we had that. I actually, just to give you an idea, the force was comprised, deliberately so, of individuals with wide-ranging and often diverging perspectives on the subject of climate change and the role of local government. We had members of the business community, environmental advocacy groups, the Latinx community, the Salem Area Transit District, public and private educational institutions, Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, Oregon's largest natural gas utility, Oregon's largest electric utility, the Home Builders Association of Marion Counties, various local industries, several nonprofit community service organizations, a social justice organization, the faith community, and the Salem Area Chamber of Commerce. The conversations were wide-ranging. And we had both young and old people, depending on how you choose to define that. And we got a lot of opinions, and it was good. It was an excellent group. Forgot how many times we met, but when you get a lot of people together, you know, I mean, you're not going to agree, but at least you grow to appreciate the viewpoints of other people. And we certainly did that amongst all of the members of the task force and the professional staff. Among the key things is that what was incorporated into the climate action plan, it did not constitute, this is not a mandate. We're not saying we will do this thing. It was not a directive, it was not passed by ordinance. And approval of the climate action plan did not equate to allocations of funds. That was more or less the approach we took going into it, and why council accepted it as we provided. You remember I talked about the four suggested strategies in the council policy agenda. The current climate action plan is 183 strategies, divided amongst 7 different categories, as you see here: transportation, land use, economic development, community, materials and waste, energy, natural resources, and food. Inside the climate action plan, I'll just quick overview of what you can find in there. This is under one of the 7 categories of transportation and land use. In that category, one of 7, there are 42 separate strategies. In the climate action plan, every strategy, every category has a vision. In this case, the vision includes access to safe, reliable, and affordable transportation options. That was our vision under the transportation category. Every category had a guiding equity principle. Broadly here is that the transportation active choices are provided in underserved communities and more. Specific to each category, there are a number of objectives. In the transportation category, there were a total of 7 objectives. And under each objective, there are strategies. Yes, I don't know how many strategies in this one. And this is, you know, shorthand. The first 3 strategies under transportation and land use category: improve the bicycle network, improve bicycle safety, and improve sidewalk network. And there's more details, of course, in the fine print behind that. For each strategy, we talked about the greenhouse gas reduction potential: low, medium, or high. This is a very subjective view, kind of in relation to all the other strategies, using the best professional judgment of a variety of subject matter experts. Costs: $1, $2, $3, or $4 signs. $1 sign is less than 200,000. $4 signs is over 5 million. Again, very professional judgment on how much we thought something might cost to achieve it. Lead agency: these all 3 have city lead, fair enough, but the other lead agencies included Marion County, parts, business communities and nonprofits, and say, for example, this Salem Area Mass Transit District, Chariots. So each strategy had a lead agency assigned to it. And then for each of the strategies, in addition to the greenhouse gas reduction, there's a list of co-benefits that could come. There's some things that you do, actually most things that we do have more than one benefit. Among the co-benefits, there's public health, benefiting the local economy, providing additional mobility choices, increasing equity among the community members, and then environmental quality. And then suggested timeframe: short, medium, and long. Short within 2 years, medium 3 to 5, and then beyond is beyond 5 years. Or long is beyond 5 years. I talked about whether you want to set greenhouse gas reduction goals before or after you know how close you're going to come to meet them. We set them beforehand, and so this is part of the development of the Climate Action Plan. Was very detailed forecasting with a model put out by the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, called ICLEI. And they have a model that includes a range of inputs: emission targets, trends, legislation, transportation trends, population, technology. It's very complicated. And so we did 2 different scenarios forecasts. There's, to orient you, that, if you could see it, is estimated greenhouse gas emissions for wastewater. That's from residential. That's from stationary combustion. That's residential electricity. Commercial, again, commercial electricity. and that's from transportation. The middle star was our 50% greenhouse gas reduction by 2025. The bottom right-hand star is our net zero gas. And again, the bar 2016 was our baseline information, and then to 2050, our goal. Scenario two, and then that shaded hash part is how much emissions you avoid over the course until 2050 if you do all these different things. And that's what you have to do. To follow this line, we call it challenging but achievable in the plan. Increase building efficiency by 10%, no more natural gas growth, and as you see the different increases or decreases. And a zero emission bus fleet. If you do all of those things, we still don't quite make our greenhouse gas reduction by 2035. Instead of 50%, we're closer to 40%. And instead of zero emissions by 2050, even if we do all these different things, we're only at about 35%. So doing all these different actions, strategies, we're still not going to quite get there based on where we want to be. A lot can happen in 25 years, but that's where we are. So the natural question is, what do you have to do to get to those goals? Same scale. There's 50%, become close to reaching it. There's a net zero by 2050. To get there, you have to do everything. Oh, that's how much greenhouse gas emissions are avoided. To get there, everything in scenario one, plus all those. Which is why we called it ambitious. So, summarizing, it took us about 18 months to develop climate action plan with significant input from a range of stakeholders and a lot of public engagement and a lot of public feedback. The plan is not a mandate, it's a plan, and it guides our activities, our programs, our priorities. Not quite 200 strategies. Now we've completed a number of them, so we're down to about 168 strategies still to complete. As I said, a lot can happen in the next 25 years. Among the highlights of the first 3 years of this climate action plan, we have hired a full-time climate action plan manager. Over $6 billion in grant funding. We started on basically half of the strategies, completed 15 of them. The collective view is that our responsibility is to do what it is we can, to the degree we can, to address the issues related to greenhouse gas emissions. And I will pass questions.
Right. Questions from anyone? First of all, thank you so much for that overview. Very much appreciated, because I think I am the only individual from the previous committee. So we are everyone else is new, and so it's really helpful to have that overview. Councillor Teigen?
Thank you, Councillor Varney, and Robert, thanks for the overview. I'm curious on this last slide in terms of the grant funding that the city has invested in climate action. This is probably a bigger question than you can answer offhand, but can you characterize the source of the funding for that? Is it utility, public works? Is it the general fund? Are we a pass-through? Just in general.
So some of it is from USDA, some of it is from Oregon Department of Transportation. Some of it's from Oregon Department of Energy.
Got some from the trust too,
Energy Trust.
Energy,
Trust
yes.
of Oregon.
So those are all just sort of pass-through. The city is the pass-through organization on that.
No, the city was the recipient. It was reimbursement, but the city received
Copy.
benefits.
Okay, great.
If I had to expand a little bit, so the climate action plan manager is actually funded by Public Works out of the utility, just because of the effects that climate has on our utility, whether it's stormwater, drinking water,
You
even our
bet.
water flows. There was early on a small allocation of general fund money a couple of years ago. It wasn't much. I don't recall what that amount was. It was maybe 100 or 200,000.
I think it was 100,000 for the solar feasibility study at the airport, if I'm correct.
Sounds right.
Okay.
So there was a small chunk of general fund at one time, but at this point, it's just public works funding and grants.
And if I remember correctly, I was on council when we passed the climate action plan, and we had to set aside some funds to hire those consultants from Vertus. And I seem to recall we set aside 150,000 or so for them to form the task force and consult with the task force and so on way back when. I don't remember if those were general fund dollars or not.
I'm not
I
sure either.
think those were utility funds, and in the end, it's about 215,000 for the whole body of work that Veritas and others did.
Mhm.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. Counselor Matthews?
Yeah, so kind of keeping on the same theme of money. So with scenario one, which obviously kind of takes us to that 35%, it sounds like possibility of carbon neutral, and then scenario two, which kind of takes us down to the 0%, which may not be quite realistic right now that we can see. Do we have projected costs of kind of what it's going to take? Like obviously 6.3 million is what's been allocated so far through grant funding, as well as maybe some other funds. But like, do we have a projection on how much it's going to cost us to actually get to that level?
No. The best we have for each of the strategies is $1, $2, $3, or $4 signs.
Okay.
And we could add them up, but at that point it become very nearly meaningless, but very expensive. You look at even replacing a fleet of internal combustion to electric vehicles, program elements to increase ridership, encourage passive transportation, things like that. Very expensive and time consuming.
But Mr. Chandler, if my understanding is correct, those aren't necessarily costs to the city. If to swap out every natural gas furnace in the city, which is an ambition held in the climate action plan, it wouldn't necessarily, the city isn't going to spend the money to do that. It's just, Shane, to your question, it's just going to take a lot of someone else's money.
Yes, to be clear, the cost I was talking about was swapping out the city's fleet from internal combustion to electric, and that is our money, our people's money.
Sure.
Among the comments, one of the reasons why you got 700 different pages of comments is there was a misperception that we were going to mandate everybody get rid of their natural gas stoves and go to induction or electric. That is not the case. There is a strategy that says encourage people to do that. I forgot the exact wording of it, but certainly not a mandate. A couple other cities have tried something along those lines, either new construction, and found that it was wanting in legal basis.
So to be clear, we don't currently prohibit natural gas fireplaces in new construction.
We don't prohibit it under any circumstances, correct?
Okay. Yeah, and I've been on the receiving end of those misconceptions, and I've definitely had to set the record straight with some of my constituents. So as you may find, you may need to do so as well.
Do we know, do we currently do the opposite in incentivizing electric as opposed to natural gas for builders or for developers or whoever's basically putting that furnace in or that gas in?
So the city does not. There are incentives from either Energy Trust of Oregon for people who are in PGE or Northwest Natural Territories, and there are incentives from Salem Electric, and those incentives are based off of reducing the need for capacity expansion in those energy systems, and so it helps save those energy producing and distributing companies money in the long term. So that's where that funding source comes from, and that's why they are able to provide those supports, but that's not from city funds whatsoever.
The last little thing I will add is that the presentation here was drawn from a paper Juliana and I wrote last year, so we can make copies of that available. It's gripping reading about our climate action plan.
No doubt.
Yeah, no, lots of information. That would be helpful. It's a really great, helpful summary.
Chair Barney, I had some questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, no worries, no worries. Where are we at in solar at the airport? I know we've been looking into it. I think we had submitted a grant perhaps application in the past. I'm just curious where we're at on the airport specifically, or other kind of energy sustainability initiatives for the airport.
Yeah, you have a better answer. I can give a high level one, but you may have more information.
I think we're both thinking the
Yeah.
same high level.
Yeah,
So go ahead.
Yeah, go. For
I mean, the last I had heard is the best place for it was if you had covered parking, you had all the solar on top of the parking area,
Hmm.
is what the study concluded, which
Which we don't have.
we don't have, and we don't have the money to
Yeah.
cover the parking and do it.
Gotcha.
So
And I think it got more complicated is that because of the location of the solar panels and the pulsar reflections, it hinges on a relocation of the control tower.
Mm-hmm.
which the control tower is planned to get relocated.
Right.
Right.
So that part is good.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be an option in future, and so I'm keeping my eye on grants and other funding sources for after that tower gets built. But until that happens, we don't have really the opportunities to start work on getting those funds.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. I mean, when my residents drive by the airport, they see how vast it is in size, geographic space, and they are bound to wonder, why don't you have solar somewhere on this gigantic piece of property? So what would you say in response to residents saying, okay, fine, don't build covered parking, why not put the solar panels, at the far end of your property?
Yeah,
Or
so
something like that.
in the solar feasibility study, when they looked at all of the other options, there wasn't the ROI in there. And so even with like Energy Trust of Oregon funding sources, ROI, return on investment.
Right.
So there wouldn't be the business case for us to invest even with incentives on any place other than for like the parking area.
Got it. It would be too expensive
Yeah.
to do it. Is it because you just have to build, electrical line all the way out there? So it's not just
And then
cooking up
there's
solar to nowhere.
Yeah, and then there's also, I think issues, I think the
That's-
only
that's-
place that had the issues of the reflection was in the parking, correct? Or was there also some in the,
I don't recall.
there might have been a couple places that it had the reflection issues as well.
Okay, that's fine. Next question, how much money do we have in this current fiscal year? And I know we're wrapping it up in late June. How much money do we have in this year to implement these strategies? I mean, I'm just kind of curious what our budget is this year to continue the work of the Climate Action Plan.
I think that we might have a little bit to help support one of the studies. So I think that we have put a bit in the budget, but we're planning on offsetting that with some of the grants. So I don't think that we have any solid funding. It's mostly just grants.
And funding from utilities for the cap manager position, correct?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, great. So make sure I understood. Let me see if I had any others. Particularly for our newer members of the committee, I served on the Climate Action Task Force, by the way. I thought it was really well done. There really was outstanding representation from a wide variety of perspectives. So I was really proud to be a part of that. I thought staff did a great job. I thought the consultants were worth every penny. And we got so much content out of that. We got so many things to work with, and having it categorized by who's going to make sure it happens, or how expensive it's going to be, and so on. That's a lot of work. So I think we really, haven't really identified just what a tremendous amount of work that is. And remember and I want to, as the senior person in the room, remember this city used to think climate change wasn't a thing. And by city, I mean members of council. And I have a feeling the people with science-y careers and diplomas under their wall disagreed, but they're not going to say anything like that. It was really hard to get this climate action plan passed in the first place. We had members of council who thought it was a waste of time to do this. So the first time it was brought as a motion, it failed. And the second time it did pass, and it was even passed by Budget Committee, which had some naysayers on it as well. So it took a lot for us to get here, and we've now finally joined several other major cities, some of whom have had climate action plans for years and years and years. Like Eugene is on its version 2.0, when we got started. And there were several other cities of various sizes that had one. So I'm really proud of all the work we've done. And thank you, Mickey, for serving on this committee. So I just wanted to provide a little more historical context that this is a big deal. And it's really, you know, I'm just really excited by all the work. I'm trying to see if I have anything else. Yeah, my question was, do you have a sense for how many other Oregon cities currently have a climate action plan?
A climate action plan specifically, I think that there's about 6 or 7. There's about a dozen cities that have people in their sustainability or similar offices that I coordinate with.
Mm-hmm. Because, you know, one of the things I was kind of struck by, I think it's Portland's Planning Commission has like a planning and sustainability component to it, which is something historically the city's planning commission has not really taken into consideration the climate impacts of the projects that come before them, at least not in the way that it could potentially. So I don't know offhand if out of the 183 strategies, whether there's something in there specific to getting the planning commission to be more thoughtful about the climate when they look at all these projects that come before them, but I would be curious to know. And I'm sorry, that feels like a pop quiz probably for you to have you have all 183 committed to memory, don't you? No one does. So maybe more of a homework assignment, but I would be genuinely curious to know, because to me, I feel like council has limited bandwidth. Planning commission, they play an instrumental role in shaping the footprint of this city. And so I would love to see, you know, whether any of our strategies involve planning commission and how they can be a part of the solution.
We can certainly look into that and coordinate and get back to you.
Yeah, great, thank you.
I suspect they're doing some things that are in our code, but I don't know to what extent.
So what about the water mitigation, that meeting that, you know, the collective meeting that we had about making sure that any runoff water, storm water was being mitigated? I would think that would be part of climate action. And that certainly is in the policies of required building, but I don't know if there's any others. That was something we did just last year to update all
Our
of
standards.
those, all of those rules. So people have to have more space to manage the runoff so that it's not going down into the wastewater and it's going back into the ground.
That makes sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. About that, the stormwater, what was it called? It's Stormwater Advisory Group. Which you came up with, and then in combination with swag. I like that, like it a lot. No, great ideas. Thank you very much. Any other questions before we move on?
Just one
Oh,
last
go ahead.
slide.
Sorry.
on what we're-
I'm
so
sorry.
Just, this is a brief overview of where we're at and the current progress, and this was the executive summary of the 2024 annual report. So 53% of the strategies, their progress towards implementation, 8% of the strategies are completed. And then from 2023 to 2024, there was a 9% decrease in strategies with no progress. And then from the 2024 work plan, there was progress on all 13 strategies identified, and strategy progress on an additional 12 beyond the 2024 work plan.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because then it gives us a good lead into, you know, little bit our work plan for 2025. You know, what do we look at accomplishing? That's really helpful.
And that,
I think Shane used his hand.
Oh, okay. Shane, go ahead. Councilor Matthews.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Is there, and there probably is, and I just don't know where to look, but online, is there already some sort of a database or something where you can go in and see kind of what ones have completed, what we have in progress, what's out ongoing, kind of like where we are metric wise on a regular basis to this?
on a regular basis, no. One of the strategies for 2025 and the proposed work plan is to have a dashboard. I don't think it'll go strategy by strategy, just because there's a lot of coding work that would go into that. So I think that it'll just be the annual report will give you updates on which strategies have had progress in the previous year. Just based on current limitations of staff capacity, but
Okay. So does the annual report, it does go strategy by strategy and say which ones we've completed and stuff? The annual report does.
for which ones there were progress on, it doesn't go over all 183.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good.
Sure, yeah, go ahead, move on.
Great, and so just some grant updates and some federal changes. So first with some of the federal updates, there were a couple of executive orders that have impacts on what's going on for the climate action plan. There were a couple, so the first two executive orders that have some impact were unleashing American energy and declaring an energy emergency. Some of the impacts include there was a reversal of the federal EV mandate, and I put in parentheses there, imagined there was never a federal EV mandate, but there was a reversal on that. So there's kind of some cloudiness around what that means. Decreased regulation on the oil industry, and then there was a pause on funding under the IIJA and the IRA, so the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. The courts ruled against the freeze. However, some organizations are still noting impacts of that freeze, and so what that actually means is still a little bit cloudy as well. The third executive order that has an impact is the Putting America First in international and environmental agreements. So that's the first step in withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accords. Since that has come out, Michael Bloomberg and the Bloomberg Philanthropies did say that they would be kind of filling that gap and helping to fund the US's portion of the agreement on that. And that will still kind of put more of the cities on the hook for meeting the climate goals. And then the other point I wanted to share and just a resource is the University of Columbia Sabin Center for Climate Change Law. They have a live online dashboard that has the climate backtracker, and so it shows kind of what different executive and other federal actions are going on and how that impacts climate action. And then a couple other items of note is the tax credits and elective pay incentives. It's still advised that for doing things like solar installation and purchasing EV vehicles, that local governments and other entities that are exempt from tax, that they should still file those taxes for the direct or elective pay. And for those of you who don't know, direct or elective pay is when taxes exempt entities can still benefit from tax rebates. And so entities that are exempt from paying taxes are still filing taxes, and then they can get those rebates back. And so it's still advised that those are filed for 2024. And they say that it should still be good in 2025, but it's a little bit less clear if that will stay the case. And then there have been removal of key resources, websites, tools, and staff at the federal level, including the Economic and Climate Justice Screening Tool, and that was a online map that helped with visually identifying places that were impacted by environmental justice, as well as the LEAD tool, which is the low income energy dashboard. And that one would help to support energy efficiency and weatherization in communities that have high energy burden. So some of those key resources have been removed, as well as the Energy Efficiency Conservation Block Grant had staff at the U.S. Department of Energy that were conducting cohorts and providing technical assistance for improving energy efficiency with municipalities. So with some of those federal updates, Here are the grants that we did for 2024 and in progress. So the first two are around the inline hydroelectric turbine. And for those of you who aren't aware, in our Turner water system, there's higher elevation than is needed. So we have the opportunity to capitalize on that excessive pressure by adding a turbine into our clean water pipes, and that can generate energy. And so we've received and are in the process of doing a planning grant. And then from that planning grant, we'll be able to apply for additional grant funding from Energy Trust of Oregon. And that should help us with creating a finalized plan that then could be shovel ready for other investments and other grant funds to help get that to the finish line. The third one on this is the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant. So this one is through the U.S. Department of Energy, and it was funded under the IRA. So it's questionable of whether or not we can finish it out. We did start work on it, and it's to do our municipal energy master plan, which would help the city create a framework for reducing energy moving forward as we experience high increases in energy costs, because it helps save the city a lot of money in the long term and help us plan out how and when we do energy efficiency upgrades and help us find funding for those. The fourth one on that is the Tualatin Neighbors Charging Up was a regional grant. We were one of 17 cities involved in that grant. And that one was through the U.S. Department of Transportation, the Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Grant. That one was awarded, but the final signature was not attained prior to the change in administration. So that one is currently pending, and it seems like it might not go through. So we are hopeful, but that one's kind of pending update.
And again, to be clear, that $15 million was awarded the city of Tualatin with 17 partner cities. So a portion of that will be coming to us, assuming it carries through, for improving accessibility to our EV charging systems.
And that one would be specifically for multifamily, and it would provide us up to, or a minimum of 25 chargers.
Dr. Chandler, of that 15 million, approximately how much was supposed to come to Salem? Had that
They
been
didn't have that.
determined?
I don't think we had that number.
So you guys hadn't worked out a formula yet as to who gets what under the 15 million. You just didn't get that far. Okay, understood. Thank you.
Our first meeting was supposed to be in January.
How disappointing.
Yeah,
Oh, that's crushing. I'm so sorry. Not my
we're
fault.
still
but
hopeful. We're still hopeful.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. And then the last one on that was the $20 million grant that we applied for the Environmental and Climate Justice Community Change Grant for severe weather resiliency and energy efficiency. That one was not funded, unfortunately. But we don't have grants pending on that either. So it's not like the big letdown kind of situation. So that's last year's grants, and then upcoming grants, we're going to be focusing on smaller projects. We aren't anticipating having the large scale federal grants that were available in previous years. So we're looking at small projects focusing on resiliency, energy efficiency, and co-benefits. One of the small grants that we're looking at is the Bloomberg American Health Initiative has a network of practice grant that we've been asked to submit a full proposal for. It's about $25,000, and we would be focusing on pedestrian safety for K-12 schools. So it would be like a public service announcement type of campaign for that. So we're looking again, smaller, more discrete, and more program focused funding.
Can you go back to that slide?
Yeah.
No. So to your question earlier about how much we have in the budget for climate action, I do know with the budget we're putting together, those first three lines we're showing in the budget along with Juliana's cost. So there's, $750,000 or so roughly.
So you are, those first three, the 100, 200,
And
214,
the 214,
75, you
yeah.
still are planning on putting that in our
Right,
budget?
right.
Okay.
Although that 300,000 is basically to give us budgetary authority to spend $300,000 in grants.
Something, yeah. It just shows up as the authority for us.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's all I have.
Actually, all three are authority to spend. They're all
Yeah.
grants.
Well, that was really helpful, timely, keeping us updated. I appreciate that a lot. Nice to have that, I think, and updated every meeting because
Oh,
these
yeah.
things are just in flux, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really appreciate it. So any questions? Anyone online?
I have a question about a grant I don't see on here. Minto Brown is in my ward, and I know we have been successful in getting grant funding for Louisia and other invasive species abatement. Do we have all that money in the bank at this point? I don't know timing wise whether any of the grants tied to Minto Brown are caught up in changes in the federal administration.
I think all of those grants are from the Oregon Water Environment Board.
Okay,
I'll say
they're
local,
all
but they're
state.
not federal.
Mhm.
I think it's all state board money,
Great.
I think.
Okay.
Certainly the work on Laguiglia and the phase 3, which is reforestation corner of Minto Brown, or OWEB.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead and move forward. Thank you. That was,
Alright.
like I said, that was really helpful. And now with all this info, we can jump into our work plan for 2025.
All right, and this is in the agenda packet, if you want to follow along. So in here, tasks 1 and 2 are related to CAP strategy energy 12 to develop a comprehensive approach to energy efficiency in municipal buildings. Task 1 is creating the municipal energy master plan. And again, that was funded through the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant. And that one should be concluding in September of this year. Task 2 is, Yeah.
I just want to share one more thing. When we were, looking at the work plan this year and we were talking about that specific project, there's a concern about what if that money doesn't come through. And so we had just kicked it off. I think we're just a month or two into it, but we may have to stop it if we see that the funding we're not getting reimbursed for it. So
That was my wonder. I see it's at the top of the list, but I assume this work plan was probably drafted before dramatic changes were made. Yeah.
And we briefed the consultant team who's involved with us on this project. We've selected them and we're all proceeding as if funding is going to be available. If funding drops out, then we will stop.
Okay.
No mysteries.
All right.
and then participation in the Strategic Energy Management Program through the Energy Trust of Oregon, and that's for both commercial and industrial programs. Our wastewater treatment plant and our water treatment plant have been enrolled in it last year. Moving forward, our water treatment plant up in Turner, it will be enrolling in it again this year. And then we're enrolling for, we're looking at 12 of our City of Salem buildings, and that provides incentives for both improving energy efficiency and meeting program projects. So they give you a list of things that you can do, and for each of those projects that you do every quarter, they give you some funding for that. And so that will help with providing additional funding for meeting some of the other CAP strategies moving forward. And as part of that, in task 3, that's for creating an internal green team. That is actually one of the activities for the strategic energy management. So we'll be getting some funding to offset the costs of doing that. And an internal green team, that would be to help promote some of the city staff behaviors. So that's going to include transportation land use 18, develop a commuting program for city employees and model for other Salem employers. Timely with the retrofit, people are going to be wondering, where to park and how to get to work. And so having chariots promote some of the transportation options can help provide some ease to the parking constraints during those times. Transportation and Land Use 21, similarly, it's following the trip reduction rules for incentivizing employees to commute to work by means other than driving alone in fossil fueled vehicles. Last year we did this through the Get There Challenge, and we want to continue that, but have a little bit more work with staff to improve our metrics on that. Material and Waste 10, that is create policies and procedures for waste reduction through purchasing and waste handling by city employees. We have some of these policies and procedures already in place, but getting a green team would help distribute that information a little bit better throughout the city of Salem. And so that'll help with adherence to some of those policies and getting people a bit more buy-in. And then Material and Waste 13 is engage city employees in activities to encourage behavior change through training, discussion, competitions, presentations, awards. And that's kind of the basis of creating the green team.
Councilor Matthews, raise his hand.
Oh, thank you.
I was just going to ask, so I'm not sure I understand exactly what the internal green team is. So is that a team of staff members that are volunteering for that team? Is that a team of staff members we're hiring? Or is that a community like committee that is looking at that?
Yeah, so that would just be internal staff, and they can be held in a couple different ways. They're often like an hour or less a month of just going over, here's some things that we've got going on in the city, just quick overviews and trying to get people on board with engaging in some sustainability projects.
It gives an umbrella name for our ability to coordinate, collaborate, cross-divisional, cross-department.
Gotcha. Okay.
Good question.
And task 4, creating workshop series and seminars for supporting residential climate-friendly actions. Workshops will address several climate action plan strategies. So Energy 32 is spreading awareness of Energy Trust of Oregon's incentives and general energy efficiency. We had our first workshop back in January, and we had about 20 people show up for that. And so we're hoping to do a couple more of those and specifically focus in on seniors and people who their first language is Spanish, and provide that information on incentives to those specific populations as well. And then Natural Resources 10. So an upcoming workshop that we have is with Marion Soil and Water Conservation District, and it's to provide assistance to residents to increase their own tree canopy coverage and create spaces such as urban forests, community gardens, and pollinator habitats. So I'll get a little bit more into that in a bit, but we do have an upcoming workshop on that. And then Material and Waste 14, this is for establishing a citywide waste reduction education program. And that actually fits with the city's requirements for compliance with the opportunity to recycle. In task 5, we've worked with Marion County and their Sustainable Business Network. They recently renamed from Earthwise to Sustainable Business Network. They've been around for over 10 years, so collaborating with them will help reach more entities that have been engaged in sustainability work. And what we'd like to do is help with developing a commuter program model for other Salem employers. That's the second part of Transportation Land Use 18. Collaborate with nonprofits and energy companies to implement programs that help business owners increase energy efficiency. That's under Energy Strategy 14. And that one is also timely because we have the Oregon Building Performance Standards coming up in 2028. And so helping businesses comply with those can make them eligible for early incentive funding for that compliance. And even if they aren't eligible for that compliance, it'll just help them be aware and be ready once that compliance comes into effect. Energy 19 set a goal to increase the businesses certified by the Business Network, and Economy 8, promote businesses participating in the Sustainable Business Network. Hi, Paul.
Hey,
Counselor
thank-
Tyler, sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Juliana. Counselor Nishioka and I have had a couple conversations with businesses downtown, and I just kind of wanted to raise maybe a tangential issue related to this task 5. See what your response is, or if it's, an interesting place to take the conversation. It has to do with the changes coming to downtown parking this summer and into the rest of 2025. And we've heard from really kind of wage earners within the downtown community that they're concerned about the impact that's going to have on them in terms of, well, some of them just we know they just kind of game the quote unquote free parking system in order to not have to pay for parking when they're, downtown earning an hourly wage. And we've given them all the information there is to give about the parkades and things like that. But some of them, I think, are interested in knowing, maybe figuring out how to use the bus, if there's a way to subsidize things like more climate-friendly modes of transportation in lieu of paying for more parking at the parkades. So I'm just kind of curious if that's a constituency you're hearing from, those downtown workers that are kind of most connected to the bus lines. And I don't know what your reaction to that is.
Thank you so much for listening to those concerns. I personally haven't heard any of those, but I have been anticipating them. I've been talking to Chariot Transportation Options Coordinator, and we wanted to have some way to connect with those employers and see what their staff needs were and kind of have that filter through them and coordinate with them and see if there are options. With Salem as an employer, I've been talking to them about how we can kind of work with them for our staff, and we come up with a couple of interesting options, but those might not be as flexible for private employers. So I think that just like communicating with the employers and Chariots and see if there are programs that could meet the employees' demands for transportation without them needing to pay for parking or personal transportation, I think would be really effective. So I definitely like the thought behind that.
Well, I think Councilor Nishioka and I can keep you up to date. I think the thing that we're seeing when we talk to folks downtown is that, there's a downtown advisory board, there's the Chamber of Commerce, but there isn't really a place where folks who are wage earners and work downtown, we don't have a similar organization for them to bring their concerns to the city. And I think they're a pretty important part of what makes downtown work. And this is, like, to me, a really great example of that. So maybe we could let you know when we get that kind of first foray into that conversation happening, and it might be a place to have a good conversation.
Thank you.
I have a question as well on a different topic. And thank you for bringing that up, Councillor Teigen. I used my after-school job. Remember those? I had an after-school job as a high school student working at Ranch Records downtown. And yeah, parking was definitely an issue. I made minimum wage and was extremely proud of that money that I brought home, that hard-earned paycheck. And so, yeah, parking as a person who has, you have odd hours. A lot of downtown employees are part-time. They're there for a shift at a restaurant, a coffee house, a bar. They're going to have weird hours. So, taking into account the unusual scheduling demands, and employers, a lot of times they don't know what the schedule is going to look like until less than a week away. So, there's a whole other issue. So I really appreciate you sharing that, because I remember those days. It was
Oh, yeah.
time. Yeah.
Sure.
Anyway, my questions, I think I totally lost train of my thought. Now I remember. So I looked up the Marion Sustainable Business Network, and I think this is probably more of a question for Marion County government. I'm just poking around their website, and I love it. It says it's a free environmental assistance program offered to businesses in Marion County. But I couldn't help but wonder, what about nonprofits operating within Marion County? Is there any counterpart for nonprofits who might want to participate in something like that?
Yeah, I think that if they apply and go through all the same steps, I think it's just called the business network. I think if a nonprofit applies, there might even be nonprofits in the network currently. So
I'm okay.
yeah.
I'll take a look. I'll look further into it. In full disclosure, I run a nonprofit, but I would be
Yeah.
very much interested in learning how we can get involved. So some of us do a lot of paperwork, some of us don't. But anyway, okay. Thank you so much.
Julianne, is that the same program that reached over into Polk County, into West Salem that you've been working with?
Yeah, so great questions. So Marion County can't do work in Polk County. And so to have this program be for all of City of Salem, there was an agreement between myself and the Marion County staff that for the Polk County businesses, I would be the one doing all of the in-office like audits and things like that to just get them their sustainable business certification. So I would be doing all of the staff work on that, and then Marion County would do it for the rest of City of Salem. And so that's kind of how we could get that expansion. And currently there haven't been any Polk County businesses joining on. So part of the interest in promoting that sustainable business network participation would be to actually establish some foothold in Polk County.
Thank you for that, because I was just going to ask about Polk County. Yeah, I really appreciate that. Well, we'll have to work on that. And I'd like to also learn more about what it takes to get certified by them down the road. I'll have to do a little investigation on my own.
For everybody's information, it's through Green Biz, and so it's an online portal that Marion County pays the subscription fee for. So you can go through and get most of the certification, just go through that, and then there's a final inspection at the end. So that's how anybody could get certified.
Thank you.
And then the last 3 tasks on the CAP work plan for 2025 are the climate action dashboard, and that's in collaboration with other city departments for both enabling factors and for greenhouse gas indicators. That one is under Strategy Energy 04, reporting on community greenhouse gas emissions on a regular basis. So getting back to Councillor Matthews' question from earlier, that's been in progress for, we got the license in July of last year. And so just creating that dashboard and getting the data behind that has been a little bit time intensive, but I have it in my sights to have completed by the end of this year. And then task 7, continuing to pursue renewable and resilient energy generation for the city of Salem. This is under Strategy Energy 25 and Energy 28, which overall talk about evaluating solar installations on city-owned properties. And though it specifically says solar, we're kind of expanding that to all renewable energy, just because of the opportunity for the inline hydroelectric turbine. And then that one should be wrapped up by middle of 2026, possibly earlier. Task 8, supporting installation of electric vehicle charging stations for multifamily residents. I am still leaving a piece of my time open for the possibility that grant funding goes through. So then I can still be able to support the efforts on that. And that is under Energy 17, support installation of EV charging stations at existing multifamily residents and complexes. And we also have some work that PGE is doing in their telephone pole, or in the electric poles for
Community electric vehicle charging program.
Thank you. And then just the last note in the work plan is that in addition to the specific approaches, I will continue to monitor grant opportunities to implement strategies and network with sustainability programs and collaborating with residents and organizations. So if there are opportunities to make more advancement on the climate action plan progress, I will certainly make myself nimble to be able to work on those opportunities as well.
Thank you. Any questions? Sounds pretty ambitious. There's a lot there. You're very,
Yeah.
very busy and
For a group
we
of one.
appreciate you.
Yeah.
I know, I was going to
Thank you.
say, you're amazing. Wow, okay. So where do we go next with this? Do we need to approve it, or is this just kind of a working document that we work with, or what do we do?
So since this is a subcommittee, from part of the rules that were suggested at the end of last year in council, I should be presenting a work plan and a annual report. And so this is the work plan. It didn't necessarily say that it had to be adopted or accepted. If there's
Okay.
any thoughts on like how you all would like to see it changed, I'm happy to be flexible in that. But I think that it's just good to get, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, please, but I think it's just presenting it.
It's a whole lot easier if it's presented, we get feedback, we adjust it rather than adopting it and then have to go through the process to modify it or amend an adopted work plan. And it's a work plan with a lot of flexibility to it.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. Definitely does. Feedback on that?
Well, Counselor Varney, I mean, do you like this work plan? Because you're the only one who's carrying over from last year. Was this work plan adopted unanimously? Is there any reason we should make changes to it? Because I'm coming in here and I'm like, this all looks great to me, but I don't have the historical context. Is there anything you'd recommend?
No, not specific tasks. I did want to mention with some of the climate action plans, there's a subcommittee on Salem Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. And I'm looking forward to hearing some of their ideas, whether they want to come present or something, but maybe tying some of that into that, collaborating with them or with other committees, whatever. No, this looks good to me.
I mean,
Councilors, go ahead.
I'm sorry, as I
Oh.
think on it, I mean, I would love to see our planning commission do more in this space. And I don't know whether, but again, I don't even know if that's an identified strategy. So I
Right.
don't want to throw something in there that hasn't been vetted and accepted as a strategy. So I know staff are going to get back to us on that, but I'm just curious to see. We have new members on planning commission and a lot of energy, and I'd like to see them, put it to good use. So. But I don't want to hijack all the work that's already been done. I'd like to see how that can be folded into, or how it already fits within our existing structure, because there's a lot of time that was put into creating. So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
It's going to be very time consuming
Mhm.
in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Councilor Tigan, Councilor Matthews, any additions before we move on?
Not for me. I think it looks like a really great work plan. Thanks for the update on it.
Yeah, I don't have any additions. I mean, I don't know what I don't know. I'm so new to this space, so I don't have any thing that I think that I could add for it.
Appreciate that. Thanks for the comments. Okay, the next thing on our agenda is Climate Week. New York City, is that what that is?
Yeah, that's what that is. Thanks. Thank you, Chair Varney. And thanks, Juliana, for asking and giving me the opportunity to share some experiences I had earlier this year going to Climate Week NYC. I'll give just a couple opening, just sort of an introduction to the concept and then talk about what I was doing there. This is all for the work related for me, for the organization that I work for called Metropolitan Group. But climate weeks take place all over the world throughout the year. They're usually identified with a city. And really, they started in 2009 with Climate Week NYC, which was scheduled to take place the same week as the UN General Assembly, which usually takes place in New York City the first or second week of September. And in 2009, it really started as a protest to spur what was happening at the UN General Assembly that year, which was the Council of Parties. The COP meeting was also that week. And so it really started this annual gathering in New York City to spur climate action. And so, but kind of as the years have gone on, it's kind of lost its protest feel and moved into more of like a, maybe sadly, more of a corporate feel to it. I found when I was there this year. This is the first time I went back in September. It's a very busy time in New York City. About 250,000 people are added to the island of Manhattan during that time. And so if you ever decide to go, just stay out of the cab, not because, cabs are A, spewing carbon to begin with, but B, you won't get anywhere because the traffic during Climate Week is remarkable because you have all of these high profile people from across the world at the UN General Assembly, and then you have all of these climate activists as well. My personal interest in going, our organization, one of our kind of mission areas is in the realm of Earth observation and Earth observation science. And that's why we do work, have contract and work with NASA and with folks at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. But in general, we're really interested in the expansion of Earth observation science and how it can be put to use to better humanity, including understanding changes in the planet related to climate. Of course, the work that NASA has done to understand the planet Earth since the mid-1970s in its Earth observation program created the foundation for folks to really understand that the climate was changing and how it has changed. And so there's really a strong basis in Earth observation science in our climate and our understanding of the climate. So I was really fortunate to be able to go and meet with people who use Earth observation science to study the climate, and then also where that technology can head and what it can help us measure. I think in the end, I really only, during the time I was there, Juliana and folks in the room, I only went to one really city-specific event. And because for the most part, our work is really focused on forests, forest management, natural resource management, water, and other things that are easily observed from space. Urban growth is certainly observed from space, and its relationship to things like deforestation is really important as an issue that you can certainly monitor from space. But I would say though, I went to an organization called the Q Collective, which is spelled KYU, and it's kind of a group of I would say thought leaders and thinkers about climate, and also the thing that I do, which is kind of like marketing and communications and sales. And they talked about really how the future of urbanism, and it was a little bit preaching to the crowd, I would say, about urbanism and sort of like looking at the difference between, Barcelona and the way people live in an ancient city like Barcelona and a city like Los Angeles. So I wouldn't say it was anything groundbreaking ideas, but certainly interesting to hear people talk about it. I think the big change I would say probably from maybe you shouldn't be surprised if you go to New York City and what people talk about is money, because that's what makes the world go around, and that's what makes Lower Manhattan go around. And really, so many of the conversations that I went to at Climate Week this year were really about using Earth observation science to support and bolster ESG investments on behalf of large corporations. So publicly traded corporations have made commitments to their shareholders in their official SEC documents that they will make commitments like the city of Salem has a goal, they also have a goal to cut their emissions by so many, by such and such percentage by 2035 or by 2050. But then they also have a responsibility to demonstrate that they're actually doing that. And so a lot of the conversations that I went to were really about the structure that's being built up in order to say with a straight face to their shareholders that, yes, we're actually doing this. And so that might be if they've made an investment in offsetting their carbon emissions by growing a certain amount of mangrove forests. Did those forests actually get grown? How do you know that? Well, we hired this company, Planet, who takes a photo of the Earth every day to say this is how much mangrove growth was in the thing that we supported in the last year. So really, it's about that. A lot of the conversation was about supporting those investments. Though I would say you kind of saw two things going on. One was in the United States, it's this really sort of ESG and SEC like monitoring. And then in the European Union, there's regulations being passed by the European Union that requires companies to be able to say with certainty that their practices aren't making deforestation worse, like what's called the EUDR, the European Union Deforestation Regulation. And that was the talk of the town, and partly because the EU put a 1-year pause on implementing EUDR like a week before Climate Week. So that's what everyone was talking about at the time. Now that was September, kind of a different world here in February. But it remains that a lot of these companies still have these commitments on their books and still need to say with a straight face that they're meeting them. So in some ways, America is going to do what America does, which is create a market and see if they can make some money on it. And walking around New York City that week, I can tell you they've done that and they are making money. So, and maybe to some extent the climate is benefiting. I don't know. You tell me. So that was what I was there for. That's what that was sort of my experience.
Wow. Well, thank you for providing that information, and it sounds like a good, pretty informative in many ways. So what is New York City doing in terms of a climate action plan?
New York City has changed dramatically since I first went there in 2002. And I think that they have both New York City and Washington, D.C. in terms of, I think the thing that I noticed the most about having visited those towns a lot in, the 25 years of my professional career is their change in how they use their right of way is really remarkable. Going from, the 6 lanes of, the street of Broadway going down through 42nd and Times Square is all for cars. And over the course of 20 years have changed that to there's 2 lanes for cars and 4 lanes for people. And they're really not afraid to use paint in their right of way to show where people can walk and where cars can't drive. And I think just even as someone who doesn't live in those places but visits them not infrequently, you can really sense a difference in the change of the community. It's not always like, it doesn't mean people are kumbaya about it, because there's like entire blogospheres dedicated to people who don't like how New York has changed as well. But every time I'm there, I always try to find one more place where they've done something with the right of way that's pretty unique. Whether that's the, High Line, the raised park that it used to be a railroad line and it is now one of the destination parks in the city, or 2, just painting stuff blue and putting chairs all over it and making sure cars don't drive there. So to me, that's what climate action looks like out on the ground. To say nothing of congestion pricing, which is kind of the biggest thing that they've done charging people, I think $12 a trip when you drive below Central Park in Manhattan.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up because I was going to mention it on my way here. I heard that congestion pricing there has reduced at least the commuting time by 30% something. So that to me, there are less vehicles out there creating more of that congestion. And so it seems to be making a difference.
Yeah, and they're like many transit organizations in the United States, the finances for their transit's upside down. And that's a big part of the reason for congestion pricing too, is to make sure that they've got a sufficient stream of funds to maintain their subway and bus system in the long run.
Good point.
End of report.
Well done.
Yep.
And then just before we adjourn, some upcoming events. We have the Climate Action Plan workshop on the plant walk. That's April 19th from 10 to noon at Busch Park. And I'll send flyers for all of these out prior to, I guess, prior to the, maybe even April 1st. And so then everybody has plenty of time. There's also an Earth Day event at the Oregon Gardens, and that's from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Marion County Environmental Services is going to do their Earth Day event this year, April 26th at Bong's Landing. Sorry if I say that
I don't know
wrong.
where it is.
And then for the CAP committee members, Willamette University Environmental Science capstone students are doing projects on the Climate Action Plan. They're writing memos for Climate Action Plan strategies that have not been started yet. And so it'll kind of create like a Rolodex for me to be able to look into future years for some of those additional actions. And so if anyone is interested in attending those with me, we can have up to 2 counselors come for that. So let me know if you're interested. It's May 2nd from 2 to 5.
Excellent. Lots of information today. Anyone have any last questions? It looks like our next meeting will be April 21st.
All right, Suzanne.
Oh, go ahead, Paul. Sorry.
Thank you, Counselor. I just want to acknowledge Robert. Thank you so much for following up with our friends in the Grant neighborhood about the PGE pole project. I think in between the time we were asked that question and the time we answered it, there was like, flood, fires, storms, and like everything, a new utility bill system, like a bazillion things happened. But I just really want to, I think it's really great that you had that individual conversation, and it's important when we're doing these projects that we're communicating well, and it's sad that PGE dropped the ball, etc. But I just really appreciate you, closing the loop. So thanks.
Oh, very welcome. Thank you for the kind words.
Did he see the fact sheet that you worked out yet?
The Q&A?
Yeah.
No, because no, we had another review of that.
Okay. Yeah. So there's Robert's put together a question and answer sheet for those EV chargers. So that's one thing that's been happening in the last couple of weeks, because not only did you have your issue, Councilor Nurdak had an issue down in South Salem also.
Oh, yeah.
And so putting together a package so that we can share with people and as we go forward.
That's great. I can't wait till there's hundreds of them across the city. So
Some can.
hopefully we can pick up the
I don't know.
communication part so you don't have to be the POC for 500 neighbors, Robert. But thank
It was
you.
a charming
Did they
conversation.
make
Really
you
enjoyed
cheer
it.
on
Actually.
that?
Honestly.
On the committee.
I'm going to have to jump. Great to see everybody. I'll see you later at the work session tonight for those who will be there.
Sounds good.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. I'm just going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting, and I'll see everybody April 21st. Thanks.
Beautiful.
Not a day before. Nope, that's right. No meetings until April 21. Problem solved.
Yes.
You don't meet, there's no problem. So.
That is a positive attitude you've been talking about.